So good afternoon, Boulderites. My name is Ebony Freeman. I'm a 2-year Boulder Googler, solutions consultant, and accessibility speaker and coach. And I am thrilled to welcome you to Lights, Camera, Ability, Accessibility, and Entertainment. Today we'll be awed by top film professionals at the intersection of entertainment, accessibility, and inclusion. We'll start with introductions, and next we'll have a panel discussion followed by a moderated Q&A of questions from audience members like you using the Dory linked in the calendar invite. Bob, if you can drop that Dory link one more time. Thank you so much. Perfect. And finally, we'll end with a wrap up by Bob Rose. To start off introductions, I've got to let you know that there is a magical TVC behind this event named Katie Harwood. Today's event wouldn't have been possible without her excellent project management skills. So let's all give a quick clap for Katie. Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much. So we're going to start off with introductions now with Reed Davenport.
Hi there. My name is Reed Davenport. I'm based in Oakland, California. I've been making documentaries for almost 10 years, and I'm currently working on my 6th and 7th documentaries exploring disability from an overtly political perspective. I'm just really happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Reed. Now, Ashley Eakin.
Hi, I'm Ashley Eakin. I am a writer-director. I've been in the industry for about 10 years. A lot of that was assisting other producers and directors, and I'm kind of finally the past couple of years in this phase of directing and writing my own content. And I was also born with a physical disability.
Thank you so much, Ashley. And to round us off, go for Paula.
Hi, my name's Paula, as you know. I am a documentary filmmaker. I was originally a producer in narrative film, and about 15 years ago started making documentary films. And I had the honor of working on 2 films with Justin Coughlin, who's also here with us today. I did a documentary about him called Keep On Keeping On. And Justin was the subject, one of the subjects of that film, as well as became our composer and composed the last film that I did, which is a short film called Live. So thank you so much for having me. So happy to be here. I'm happy Justin's here with us too.
Thank y'all so much. I also love how Justin just got a side introduction here. That is so perfect for our timing. So thank you so much. Let's go ahead and hop into our first question. How did you get into filmmaking and who was your inspiration? This is for all 3 of our panelists. So let's have Paula start. And if you'd like to have Justin come in with you on that, feel free.
Yeah, so I was working on narrative films and kind of a crazy roundabout, but I decided to start a nonprofit to help families with critically ill children. And so I left my 16-year career in narrative films to start this nonprofit in Colorado. And the same day, a friend started a documentary called The Cove. And he was saying, you know, I'm a photographer. I've never made a film before, but I need help. And I was like, well, I'm available. I'm starting a nonprofit. So I ended up starting on that film, and 5 years into it started, or about 3 years into it, started a second documentary. And then I met the director of Keep On Keeping On, who had been shooting this footage of him and his mentor, his teacher, Clark Terry, jazz legend Clark Terry, who was a student mentor, and Justin was his student. So Al had been following them and started wanting to document their teacher before he passed away because he was in his 90s, and got to know Justin. And this film just came together as a beautiful story, really about 2 people helping each other. And it was just really an honor to get to know this friendship. And yeah, and so Justin, what would you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, we crossed paths because I was a good friend of Al Hicks, who was the director, and became aware of Paula through this process. And it's quite a transformative relationship for me, getting to know Paula and working with her. And it's been really, I hate to use this term, but eye-opening to learn about this process of scoring music for film. Being totally blind, it's not something that I probably initially considered, but with Al's and Paula's encouragement and allowing me to take part in filming our film, learn the ropes and continued to pursue that, and something that I'm working on even now. So very grateful for this opportunity to share a little bit of my perspective.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And now we'll go to Reed. And again, the question is, how did you get into filmmaking and who was your inspiration?
Yeah, so filmmaking for me was a complete accident. As an undergraduate, I was supposed to study abroad in Italy. I got into a program, and when I divulged that I was a wheelchair user, the discouragement would come in because of a lack of accessibility. So the semester I was supposed to go abroad, I took a class, and one of the units was documentary filmmaking, and it dawned on me that I could make something about the inaccessibility of Europe. So a year after I was supposed to go, I went for 3 weeks and shot a film called Wheelchair Diaries, which is 28 minutes, and it was my first film. And my professor at that time was Jason Astor, who directed Let the Fire Burn, and he has been my mentor ever since.
Oh, he sounds like a champ. And now we'll go to Ashley, and I'll just repeat the question one more time, and in the future, if you don't want me to repeat, let me know. But how did you get into filmmaking, and who was your inspiration?
Yeah, I started kind of in writing, and I went to San Diego State College. I grew up in Nebraska, and I thought I wanted to get into journalism. And then the deeper I got into news, I realized I liked making up stories more. And I kind of transitioned into film, and I was going to go to grad school, but a bunch of people advised, unless I have the money up front, don't do it for film because it's very expensive and you don't know if you're going to have a career once you graduate, like a doctor or some other profession. So I just went straight into the business and started PAing. I was an assistant. I actually started in reality TV and worked on America's Next Top Model, which was very interesting. And my boss at the time was also doing narrative work. And I realized I kind of wanted to jump away from reality TV and more work in narrative. And so I worked at a production company. And slowly but surely, I started realizing I was more visual than just writing. And, I've never seen any directors like me, let alone women in general aren't really directors, but especially someone with a disability. I'm right under 5 foot. I didn't really know if I could be on a set and kind of be running the ship, or if anyone would listen to me. And I ended up just directing my first short, self-funded, like $700. It got into one festival, but I really loved the process. And so I thought I really need to work for an actual director to see if that is something that I really want to do the job and see what everything entails. And so I went on this hunt to find a director's assistant job, and I ended up working with John Chu, who directed Crazy Rich Asians. And I worked for him for 2.5 years and got to go to Malaysia and Singapore and film with them. And I really got to see the ins and outs of the job. And I at the end of working for him for 2.5 years, I quit, which was about 3 years ago. And now I've been directing and writing and, doing stuff on my own. And it's slowly but surely heating up, and there's a lot of exciting stuff in the future. But, you know, it's been about a 10-year journey. And I think, you know, John Chu has really influenced me to really advocate for disability representation, because I got to see what his film did for Asian American representation. And I thought, wow, like, what if we can start doing this for people with disabilities, and kind of showing different narratives and humanizing people.
Oh my goodness, you're speaking straight to my heart. I love this already. You're off to an amazing start. So our next question is, how has the cultural stigma of disability affected your life and informed your filmmaking? Actually, you kind of touched on that. So if you want to expand on your answer a bit, and then we'll turn it over to Reed.
Yeah, you know, for me, I feel like my life has kind of been defying expectations of what people would think I could accomplish. You know, I've had over 28 surgeries. My disability is very visible and physical. And I think sometimes people underestimate you. And I think I even underestimated myself growing up. And that's why it took me so long to actually realize that I wanted to direct. And that was my passion. Because you know, even before I got into the Hollywood industry, I was like, everyone in Hollywood is glamorous. They don't like people with disabilities. You know, I just, like, for some reason, that was the mentality that I believed. And I think it's because of the way that culture treats people with disabilities. And, you know, you go out in public and people stare, they make you feel othered or you know, weird. And that really carried over into my career and what I wanted to pursue. And it really was pushing past, who cares if people stare at me? You know, maybe when you're on set, that's actually a good thing, because people need to listen to you. So, you know, that's how sometimes you kind of have to use it to your advantage. But I think our culture and the stigma can change from media. You know, more TV shows and more films and more people's stories getting shown out there will really kind of help that stigma.
Oh, I love that. And that rolls perfectly, because I remember, Reed, you mentioned that you were doing that for the entire nation of Italy. So that's fantastic. Thank you for expanding it. And to repeat the question, how has the cultural stigma of disability affected your life and informed your filmmaking? And this one's for Reed.
Well, I mean, I think to say it's affected my life, it is an understatement. It's made me who I am. And I think as filmmakers, as artists, we always bring who we are to each and every project. So it's difficult to discern where my experiences with myself is with my work or different. They all kind of collide together.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. And then our next question is going to be for Paula and Justin. It's going to be, are there any tools, hardware or software, that you use or would like to see invented that would support universally accessible filmmaking?
Justin, I think,
Wow.
yeah, so I just wanted to start off with that, like, Justin should be answering this, but what I would say is, there are tools that are helpful. And, you know, there were tools when we follow Justin in his life. He has tools that help him, you know, find directions and communicate with his email, hearing his text, hearing his, you know, messages. But when it comes to music, you know, scoring a film, you don't need to visually see. Like, what you really need to do is feel the story. And when Justin said we encouraged him to do the score for the first film, he's done it for 2 films for me. And it's just extraordinary, because he feels and he does see the images, he sees them in his mind, and he does such an incredible job. So there are some tools maybe that Justin could share about that helped him in that process. But part of it too is, it's not looking at somebody about disabilities and adapting around them, but what do they bring? Like, what sensibilities and talents do they bring that make them exceptional at what they do? And maybe tools that help him get to what he needs to do, achieve those goals. But so much of it is about talent and skill and who people are, and seeing them for that, and not seeing them as someone disabled, but finding out how we can support them so that they can shine and bring their beautiful gifts. So, yeah, Justin, maybe you can go elaborate on
To
that.
continue on that, it was definitely really a great experience to realize that not being able to see the picture, it presents some challenges, for sure, some technical challenges. If you need something to line up just right, frame for frame, with a particular moment in a scene. But in terms of technology, that has been very helpful. I'm very grateful that in the last probably 3 or 4 years, a lot of advancements have been made. I think companies have been paying a little bit more attention to, the visually impaired creative community, and making things like, well, Apple has made Logic much more usable for a blind user, which has been amazing for me, to get access to things that most sighted people just take for granted. It's funny to consider that Logic is a audio program. It's about recording, but it's extremely visual in the layout. Every element that's on the screen, every slider, every knob has to be accessible for somebody who can't see them, and that would translate over to any other kind of editing software. So there are challenges, but it's about awareness, about realizing that we as a community do exist and have something to offer, and the more accessible things become, the more we can actually realize what we can accomplish. There's kind of, especially within technology, there's no reason why we shouldn't. So it's good to see the steps being made, and the more accessible these programs become, the more competent I become as a result.
Oh, I love that. And, I'll even forgive you that you mentioned Apple. We hear it.
I'm so sorry. I'm so
So
sorry.
I'm
I
just
know.
kidding. But
Hey, if you guys make a recording software, I'll use it.
oh, I love it. Did our engineers just hear that? I hope so. I hope so. But actually, I'd love to press just a little bit further. And you mentioned some accessibility tools that are already available. But are there any that you would love to see invented, or any that you imagine would just change your experience totally?
The thing that I'd love to see is, we're seeing a lot of advancements being made with AI, and I'd love to see that kind of power with the Google Assistant or with any of these assistants. The smarter they get with machine learning and things like that, the more useful they can be to any person with disability. For me, I'd love to be able to be interactive with an AI, to say, okay, I'm having a hard time with this particular part of the interface. Can you use your eyes, to help me out? That would be incredible. They are getting smarter, and I think the smarter they become, the more assistant, like they can become, which would be, I think, for me, a game changer for sure.
Ooh, okay. I hope our Area 120 people are hearing this. Thank you, thank you. So our next question is, were there any accessibility technologies used by your actors or actresses that surprised you? And I'll start off that one with Ashley.
Yeah, for my films that I've done, so far we haven't really used anything that, any actual tools. I'm always just making sure when we're working with actors to ask what they need, and have that space for them to speak up is really important, and ask them. I think a lot of people will assume, even when I've been casting recently on a project, someone will say, oh, well, their bio says that they have a limp. They can't walk through a forest or something, and I say, well, let's ask them. They could be able to walk through a forest and still have a limp. I have a limp. It's something where you just have to ask the people to really figure out what they need. But as far as specific tools for my project so far, we haven't used anything.
Thank you for being so people focused. That's amazing. And then we'll turn that over to Paula. And again, the question is, were there any accessibility technologies used by your actors or actresses that surprised you?
Justin, I don't think we had any specific technology, right? So the film that Justin was in, the first film that he was one of the subjects of, both subjects were blind. So we did a lot of, it was Verite film. We were flies on the wall, just quietly filming this intimate relationship. And obviously Justin had tools when we'd follow him through the streets, giving him directions. He also had a dog, a seeing eye dog, Candy. And but technology wise, I don't think, Justin, what would you say to that?
Yeah, just the typical, voice assistant on the phone, to help, stay connected with what's going on. And really, us both being blind actually ended up being kind of it made things easier actually for them to zoom in and be there with us, but we were able to kind of zone into whatever was going on with us. But I guess Candy would be the most fun technology. My little dog Candy. But yeah, that's about it.
That felt like the best small shout out to all the Dooglers on the call. Dooglers are dog Googlers. I'm never sure if it's the dog or the human, but hey, whatever. So the next question is, how do you avoid falling into the pitfall of what some people call inspiration porn, in which a film focuses on a person's disability more than the person themselves? So we're going to start off again with Ashley, and then we're going to go over to Reed.
Sure, yeah. I think it's about making a story that shows a whole person's life, and it's not just overcoming their disability. That can definitely be a part of someone's story because that is real. And even for me in my life, it's been a journey of me accepting it fully. But I think you have to make sure that's not the only part of the person's identity. And, like I'm also a wife, I'm a sister, I'm a friend, I have so many different personality things and parts about my life. And when you're showing these characters, you really want to make sure that they are, very complex and really interesting and have real human characteristics and struggles. If it's just about this one thing, then that can usually fall into some type of inspiration porn or, really just thinking about the things that you're showing and why a lot of things with inspiration porn will be congratulatory about something that is actually a really minor task. Like in one of my films, I show a woman, asking a girl if she needs help carrying out her bag to her car, but she just has one bag. It's very, she's very offended, but the person assumes that she can't hold her bag. And that sometimes, those assumptions or congratulatory things about doing a minor task is where sometimes we fall into inspiration porn and always asking yourself, how would I feel if that was about me, if I was the subject, and putting yourself in that person's position.
That feels like really good advice. And maybe you just want to mention the name of that really great film and like a maybe 15-second overview.
Yeah, so the film I did is called Single. It's a short film. It went to South by Southwest, the virtual South by Southwest, and got a special jury recognition. And it's about a girl who was born with one arm, and she gets set up on a blind date with a guy who was born with one hand, and she is pissed about it. So it's kind of about how people just think because you have a disability, you would be a good match, where really a disability has nothing to do with your personality or, who you are as a person, and kind of unpacking those ideas.
Beautiful, beautiful. And afterward, we'll send out the links to all of our panelists' films. They are literally all fantastic. It will make a great Friday night. And so next, we're going to go ahead and ask that question to Reed. And again, that question was, how do you avoid falling into the pitfall of inspiration porn, in which a film focuses on a person's disability more than the person themselves?
So I have a slightly different understanding of inspiration porn. Inspiration porn is about making non-disabled people feel better about their lives by showing how this disabled person struggles and then this disabled person overcomes, and that means that all these non-disabled people don't have an excuse to not do it. So that for me is inspiration porn. And I don't just make movies about people with disabilities, I make movies about disability. So a lot of the time, their disability is a big part of the story. Me myself, I think my disability is a big part of who I am and why I am the way I am. But the issue of avoiding inspiration board, um, I think I said this earlier, but I try to politicize disability and focus on society's shortcomings rather than the medical diagnosis or the quote-unquote impairment. There was one time I really struggled with cheated on the inspiration board. I made a documentary about growing up with a disability, and I had a lot of trouble with the track that I chose at the end. I wanted it to be emotional, but I didn't want it to be over sentimental. And I think some people will see that and see that it's inspiration but I think people who can appreciate the nuance of the story I was trying to tell hopefully will not read that as inspirational.
Thank you both so much for giving those kind of separate sides of the perspective of the matter. It's so useful for us to begin to, as you said, Reed, understand the nuance and the complexity of such a situation. And then our next question is for all four panelists. Is there anything we as a tech industry professionals can do to support accessibility in film? And we're going to go ahead and start that one off with Paula.
I think we kind of talked about that from my perspective as far as working with Justin. I think I just would add it kind of more about your last question is like when we did our film about two people who couldn't see, our film wasn't about two people who couldn't see, who didn't have eyesight. Our film was about two people with their own struggles of stage fright or health. Clark had health issues, and really it's about people. It's about stories and humanizing these people. And it never occurred to me when we were making the film to even go that direction, because I was so fascinated with who they are and their relationship was just so inspiring. And I think that's just, I think we have to be careful when we're looking at technology so that it, which is a lot of what Reed's talking about, so that it supports people, but it doesn't overcome them. We're just supporting them so that they can tell their stories and be creative and bring their talents. That it's not about that. Like Justin was just so talented in his music. He did some temp scores for us just to get us through. And then we heard them and we were like, these are so much better than what we could be creating. He's got this beautiful gift. And I think seeing people's gifts is just so important, and really getting to know them. And I don't know, Justin, is there any technology, because you do have Google listening to you right now. So this is your chance.
Well, first I want to say that what everybody's been expressing has been so beautiful. I feel like my head's going to fall off because I'm nodding so much. But yeah, it's remembering just the human behind. It's like don't let the disability cloud your view. Like Ashley is saying, there's a whole spectrum. There's a whole spectrum of things that each person has, a part of their personality, a part of their life experience. So seeing the gifts that they have to bring to the table, and having the dialogue, having things like this where we can actually speak about it. I mean, dialogue is the best way for us to be able to figure out how to solve the issues. The more communication that can happen, the more I, as a user, can figure out what I need. Sometimes we get kind of stuck in, well, that's how it works, so I'll just get used to it. And if we're not talking and speaking and kind of parsing it out, I don't think we'll ever figure out that that was a problem in the first place. So, yeah, more things like this, I guess.
Thank you. Our funders will love to hear that. So again, that question was, is there anything we as tech industry professionals can do to support accessibility in film? We'll go to Reed and then we'll finalize it with Ashley.
I'm not really sure. I mean, we live in a society that is still inaccessible in many different ways. And Google is one of the bigger companies in our society. So I think before kind of thinking about the assistive technology that is possible, the basic accessibility should be there. So having content that is accessible for everyone, for people who are blind or deaf or have sensory issues, making sure facilities are wheelchair accessible and meeting spaces are accessible. I think that is really what we should be focusing on, rather than some type of invention that can be a cool little gadget.
Completely agree there. And also, that's a perfect thing to say because we've got Katie Harwood and so many others of our RUSE real estate and workplace services professionals here who are excelling in that area. So thank you for speaking to that and speaking to the great work that they do as well. And we'll finalize it off with Ashley.
Yeah, I think Reed's saying something really interesting, about how we have to care about accessibility on a bigger scale for everyone. And once we start caring about people and people with disabilities and their stories and invest in them, then we'll want to create things to assist in other ways. I think, part of film and why I get passionate about representation of people with disabilities and hearing their stories is because it humanizes us. It makes someone care. It makes someone invested. And then the tools will come and follow. I always talk about how I was on a panel and there was a guy in the audience who he was hard of hearing, and he talked about, or not hard of hearing, he was low vision, and he talked about how much he loved audio description. And I had nothing, before my film, I got a grant through Women of Her Ward through Michelle Spitz, and she, gave me this audio description package, and I never knew anything about it. And then when I learned about it, and then I heard this guy on the panel talk about how much he loved them, and Amazon was pushing a lot of things forward to put it on all their content. It made me realize as a filmmaker, I want to put it on every single one of my films now, because that one guy shared with me how, it changes his relationship to film. And I think that's what, we need to care about accessibility on a big scale. And I think hopefully stories that, we're pushing out there, people can invest in and want to care about our community.
Ebony, I was just going to say one more thing while we have the attention of the technology team. This conversation is so great. And I even learned by Justin talking, the technology was so designed visually for people. So I think the more you can spend time with creative people and find out, and people who are doing other amazing things with disabilities, how we can support them better. And I feel like the more you can keep having these conversations, you'll learn so much about how you can enhance things you might already be doing that will really make them more accessible.
Absolutely. And we have one last question. I'm going to make a big call for the Dory. It's looking a little shy there. So if you're on the call, please post a question. And our final question on this section of the panel is, what do you wish all able-bodied people would think do or feel about accessibility? And I understand that a lot of you already kind of covered aspects of this in your prior answer, so feel free to expand or say pass. We'll work backwards and start with Ashley. And again, that question is, what do you wish all able-bodied people would think, do, or feel about accessibility?
I think the big thing is I would call everyone to go out and find a friend, become friends, become friendly with someone who is a wheelchair user, you know, especially for just general accessibility of navigating our world, and get to know them and understand the things that they come up against every single day. You know, I didn't know until I became friends with someone who's a wheelchair user, and now I'm passionate about pushing it forward, you know, and caring about it. So I think once you can put a face to an issue, I think it helps people care and stand with them and want to link arms and push for more accessibility just in general.
Fantastic. And then we're going to go to Justin.
Really, you know, what happens, especially with, well, you know, the thing that happens with developers is, you know, I heard a comment that somebody was saying, I wish that people wouldn't test out the accessibility features because it's so much more work. You know, they have to go back and redevelop or reconsider. And it's a bummer to hear a comment like that, because it maybe is a little bit, when you're talking on the technology side, it might be a little bit more work, but thankfully Google and other companies have put things in place to make it not as difficult. And it might require just a little bit more upfront, but it yields so much more, you know, in the long run, just in goodwill. When little steps get made in terms of accessibility in my life, I'm ecstatic. You know, a whole new world gets opened up because somebody decided to just do a little bit of extra work to enable me to get around an interface or to interact with something. So, you know, just weighing in terms of, I guess, the effort versus what happens after when you actually put in that little extra effort. It's not as much of a burden as you might think, and it will transform so many people's lives. So please do it.
Oh, Justin, you got me tearing up over here. Well, if anyone felt emotionally compelled by that, please feel free to go ahead and do a MoMA search for Accessibility Champs Dojo. You can literally act on Justin's sage words by learning and getting self-educated on accessibility matters. Again, that's Accessibility Champs Dojo. And the question again is, what do you wish all able-bodied people would do, think, or feel about accessibility? We're going to go with Reed, and then we're going to finalize with Paula.
So I think there is, and I know I'm being very philosophical, so I apologize, but I think there is a fine line between allyship and taking away agency from us. And I think a lot of the times non-disabled people need to just get out of the way. And that means listening to us and listening to what we need, not assuming, not inferring, but allowing us to vocalize what we need and then taking those needs seriously and not acting like it's, you know, a form of goodwill or charity, but just rather fulfilling our rights and allowing us to take the opportunity that's being presented.
Reed, thank you for the fiery political, philosophical pieces in here. So we're going to finalize with Paula. And again, that final question is, what do you wish all able-bodied people would do, think, or feel about accessibility? Final call for the Dory.
For me, personally, my niece is wheelchair. She's been in a wheelchair since she was 10. And, you know, just spending the last 25 years with her and navigating in the world, it's I think people are afraid. Like they're afraid they over move out of the way, or they don't move out of the way at all and we can't get through, or it's just they don't really know how, like Ashley was saying, meet somebody, get to know somebody. I think that's really important because we can I think they're afraid. They don't want to say the wrong thing. They don't know how to interact. Just because someone has a physical disability, it does not mean that they aren't a whole person. And I think that if we could just be more loving and caring and less afraid of asking, is it helpful if I do this or is it not? Justin will tell me, yes, I do need help to get out of here, or I don't. I got it, and just asking him so that I'm not fumbling around and making it uncomfortable for him. Just ask. And what's the best way how do you like me to help you get out of this space when there's 100 people in here right now? How do you want me to help you? Or he's like, I got it. Or that'd be great if you can help me. And he'll just put his hand on my shoulder and off we'd go. It's okay to ask, and don't be afraid that you're going to say the wrong thing or offend somebody. It's better to learn. Nobody can teach us better than the people who actually live it. And I think we could just be less fearful and more supportive and make it less about a disability and more about a friend or a colleague or, someone we're working with. And how can I help you so that you can get done what you need to do? What tools do you need? Ask them. And let's not be afraid.
What a call to action. Thank you all so much for your candid and authentic answers. It's so appreciated. Now I'll pass it over to Bob Rose for the moderated Q&A.
Thanks, Ebony, and thanks, panelists. This has been incredibly eye-opening and inspirational and wonderful to hear all your comments and thoughts and discussions. I'm really enjoying it. And just so you all know, one of the things that, because we touched on this quite a bit, Google does this every year. We do a full week of what we call Accessibility and Inclusion Week, where we have events every day and we have speakers and we have discussions and tech talks about technical issues and we bring in external people. So it's something that Google really does care about, and we try to understand more. I mean, a lot of it is about understanding, so that we get the empathy, we get the understanding. So we can build better products by understanding what some of the needs are and who the users are. So I find it really exciting and really interesting to work on these kind of things and to have you all here. So just thank you again. And as far as questions, we don't have a ton of questions, but I actually have a couple. And then there is one on the Dory. So let's start with that one. And James, if you wouldn't mind unmuting and ask your question, you get the first panelist question.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Jim Renwick. I do some work on the front end of Drive. So if you've ever been to drive.google.com, some of that code might be mine. And I just wanted to ask, and I guess this is the question really for all of you, but do you have more projects in the pipeline? And if so, what are they?
I'll start and then we can all go. Yeah, I do. I'm actually shooting something in 20 days or maybe 19 days. Maybe even less. My brain's a little foggy from it all, but I'm in Canada and shooting something, and the lead is a person with a disability, and it's a big studio's behind it. So it's really something exciting that, I've realized that a lot of these production companies do want to hear our stories in perspective, because it's fresh and new, and just kind of getting those first ones out there and to be successful, and the things that have been out there, like movie-wise, Peanut Butter Falcon did great, but for them to get people to see it was a really big struggle, and that's what I hope doesn't happen. Is I heard about them shopping that around and how that process was, just to get it distroed was really intense. So yeah, that's what I'm working on.
Thank you. Reed or Paula?
So I'm working on my first feature documentary, which is a personal film that starts off with a circus tent that goes up outside my apartment in Oakland, and it's kind of a meditation about the legacy of the freak show and whether my work has inadvertently fallen into that legacy. And then I'm working on another short, which I can't really divulge too much more about because of security.
That sounds exciting. Yeah, thank you. Paula?
I'm working on a documentary short. Well, no, it's actually a feature length now. We started with a short and now we're adding a third act. But I'm working on a film called Live about a 19-year-old who died by suicide. And we are working, and Justin scored the film, and we're working on putting together a whole call to action campaign around it as well, to bring awareness about youth suicide, which is a horrifying increasing number, but also to empower people to, again, not be afraid to talk to people, to ask questions that might be uncomfortable. But we really want the film to open up those conversations so that we can all be better support systems for each other and for our young people who are really struggling around mental health.
That sounds amazing. I'm sure it'll be very inspirational. So I had a question. If no one else, if anyone wants to jump in, you can throw questions in the chat or throw them in the dory. I had a question. So I'm an engineer. I work on search, mostly the mobile apps, iOS. So we do work very closely with Apple. We work on iOS, iPhone apps, as well as Android and Google apps. So we're very comfortable being frenemies with Apple. We're friends with them and enemies in some ways, but we do work very closely together. But one of the things that I found in my experience, working as an engineer, is that, and I think a couple of you touched on this, is that getting kind of the company and the managers and the directors to buy into or to do accessibility up front used to be really difficult. We used to build products, and then I think it was Justin who was saying, and then like test them, and they wouldn't be very accessible at all. And now we're much more in the mode of doing accessibility up front and paying that price, right? There is a cost, right? There's no, nothing is free. So making products very accessible does cost time and resources. But now, thankfully, Google is paying that price up front because we understand how important that is. So one question about, when you make a movie and you talk about, what Ashley was talking about, accommodating, like you're gonna, what accommodations does this person need, right? What kind of pushback are you getting pushback now, or did you in the past, where like an executive producer or the people sponsoring the film might say, no, we don't want that person because it's going to cost us more money, or it's going to take more time to have this person with a disability, and are those kind of questions, is that easier now that that we want to be more inclusive? How does that kind of thing work? Maybe start with Ashley, because you mentioned that.
Yeah, I think that's why we need people who are executives, studio heads, directors. The reason this crew is listening to me is because I'm the director, and I can say, I have a limp. Like, I just walked through the forest with all of you guys, and open their eyes to these limitations that they immediately put forward. But you do see how it easily, it's a risk sometimes to venture into new territory, and you don't want to be the one who, we lose a day of filming because something happens or someone gets injured. There is a lot of risk, but you need someone who can advocate in a way that they feel confident, just saying, let's do it, but then also have the power to do that. That's why we have to get these people in these positions. But I feel like it is changing, I do feel that there is some of that pushback I feel is being, listened to, and being a person with a disability in the film industry for 10 years, behind a director or behind a producer, more as their assistant, it is that thing where I would minimize my disability. I didn't want to tell people that I needed extra help here or there, but because the person who was in charge was helping, was at the top, they would advocate for me. So it's something where you always had that. So we need more people who advocate, more people who hire people with disabilities.
That's great. Thank you. Reed or Paula, anything about that?
Yeah, no, I would just say, again, it's like, I agree with Ashley that we need to advocate as a producer you build those things into your budget and you fight for them just like anything else in the budget. And you have to fight for why it's important and you have to fight to make it happen. Sometimes you win those battles, sometimes you don't. And I think if the leadership on the films have that commitment to those challenges and adding those things in, it's all a part of it. It's all money, right? Just like you're saying at Google, it's money. So if we build those things into our budgets and we plan for them and we think ahead and we anticipate, I think that's great. Anticipate that we need multiple screenings where we have additional technology for our audience or whatever those special things are. We did some special premieres and screenings with Justin for, was it the Blind Institute, Justin, I think, in LA? Yeah, Academy. And, just building that in, we're going to need travel for this. We're going to need this because this is important for the film. And you just build it into the budget and you advocate for it. And as leaders and directors, producers, we can fight for that and just make sure that it's built into that. The expectations are set, right? And it's covered. Easier to do at the beginning than later.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. If you bring it up at the very top, I even talked about audio descriptions on my film. Like, I want to do this, no questions asked. If I have to get rid of, an extra piece of furniture in one of the scenes, you can always move budget around, and that's when it's on the end, everyone goes, well, we have no money for this, so you have to, do it in the beginning, like Paul's saying.
Or no time left. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. Thank you. I think that really helps. So one thought I had for questions is I wonder if Ashley, Reed, or Paula, if you have any questions for each other, because we still have a couple minutes left, and if anyone has a question for each other, this would be a great time to ask it. Not to put you on the spot, but you have this opportunity. Okay. Well, if you don't,
I would just say if Ashley and Reed, if you need a composer, I know an amazing composer. Happy to share.
I was thinking that.
Yeah. I mean, I think
that,
it's always great to collaborate, with other disabled creatives and advocate for each other. And Justin, we may be hitting you up.
Yeah,
Can't wait to watch your
and
films,
sharing.
knowing they're described.
Yeah, and sharing, right? Like saying, oh, I know someone who does this, and like, you should know this composer. And I've given Justin's name to so many people. So I think
Thank you,
that's,
Paula.
I think it's good. Like, we can advocate for each other as well.
That's great. Paul, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. I was wondering, do you feel torn between representing disability in the stories you're telling, and do you feel like you miss out on telling the story you actually want to tell because you want to be inclusive and include representation? So basically, do you miss out on telling the story that is in your heart because you feel this pressure to, do the story that you feel like you need to do as opposed to love to do?
So fortunately, as an independent filmmaker, I don't answer to anyone. So I tell the story that I want to tell it the way I want to tell it. And at the end of the time, disability is at the forefront of that story. So I tell that story based on my own sentiment as a disabled person.
That's great. Thanks.
I would say that I don't, because it's funny because my agents were like, you don't always have to do stories about disability, and I'm like, but I want to. The spectrum of disability is so vast. There's people. I was in a Respectability Lab, which is a company that will consult on projects that have a disability character angle and just make sure kind of give them advice and guidance. But I was in one of those labs, and there were people in there who have depression, and that's their disability. And then there's people who only communicate with the tablet, and that's their, and they're paralyzed, and that's their disability. So it's like the spectrum of humanity within disability is so vast and wide in the stories. It's like, it is really endless, like what you can explore. And for me, the main issue comes down to, can I find an actor who can actually represent the story that I want to tell? And that's when sometimes my stories do have to shift a little, because, you know, their disability isn't the exact one that, you know, I can tell, or, you know, acting is a hard skill. And that is something that, you know, that's kind of my biggest challenge that I've run up against is, you know, there are a lot of people out there, but someone who has that specific disability of that story that I want to tell is sometimes hard to find.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. So we're almost out of time, and I really want to give Justin a chance to play a few songs for us. But let me close it, because I know some people have time commitments. Some people are going to have to drop off at 2 o'clock. So I just really want to thank all the panelists again. It's been amazing hearing your stories, and I want to thank Ebony for putting this all together. This is Ebony's brainstorm. She started this discussion about a month ago and said, hey, I know there's some great filmmakers. Let's do a film panel. And I said, well, I know one too. Let's get them all, and we can have this discussion. So thank you, Ebony, and thank you, Katie, for helping us organize all this. And thank you all Googlers for coming and joining us and asking questions and being a part of it. So I'll ask Justin if you would play. We'd love to hear you. And if people need to drop off at 2, please feel free. And if people want to stay, Justin, I don't know what your time limit is, but if you want to stay beyond 2, I would love to stay, you know, until you're done playing. I'll stay and listen.
We're hanging out. Yeah.
We're hanging out.
It's
Absolutely.
a nice hang.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone.
So good.
Thank you. That was beautiful.
Oh, Justin, I think you might be on mute.
Oh yeah, he's muted. You're muted, Justin.
Perfect.
Oh,
Nope.
Nope.
Oh,
Hey.
it keeps on going off. Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, feel free to bounce. I'll play one more song. And this one is a song I wrote for Clark Terry, the fellow who's in this film that Paula produced, called "Keep On Keeping On." The song is called "For Clark." Very nice to meet all of you guys, and I won't be offended when my screen reader says so and so has left the room. I'm like, wow, that really hurts your ego, doesn't it? Where did you go? Stay. No, it's all good. Afternoon, people got to get back to work. So here's "For Clark."
Thank you.
Beautiful, Justin.
Keep the microphone on. All right. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Yes, that was so beautiful.
Thank you, guys.
That was
Is
wonderful.
that good? Does that get us to the top of the hour or what?
Well, we're past the top of the hour, so
Oh, hey, all right.
so we did it. So thanks again. We should close here. That was just amazing, and thank you again, everybody, for coming, and thank you, Googlers, for hanging with us. That was just tremendous. And good luck to everybody, and please, keep in touch. And you three should, you have I think you have each other's emails, so you can keep in touch with each other, or if you need to, you can get in touch with Ebony or myself, and we'd be happy to, keep you all hooked up together, because hopefully you can help each other, and we can expand the community, and we can all work together to make the world a better place, because that's ultimately why we're here, right? Spread the love.
Thank you.
All right, bye everyone.
Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Nice job.
Thank you. This was awesome.